Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Tall and Short of It podcast. We're coming to you live from Max Verstappen's engine. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We are a day late and $1 short. Well, maybe not $1 short, but we're back for this week's episode. We've got some Australian Grand Prix recap, as Justin has alluded to. We've got some League of Legends. We've got some Magic the Gathering, the usual suspects. Justin, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. Really excited for the show. Like you said, 1 day late and $1 short, but we've got a fistful of quarters and we're feeling good. Aaron, start me off. Talk to me about your Rose Thorn seed for the week.
Sounds good. So for my Rose this week, I'm happy to be continuing to see some improvements in my basketball game from getting these practice days in. I got Sunday and Monday this week in the morning. I spent about an hour and a half just shooting around on my own at one of the outdoor courts. The weather was nice enough to do that. And then in my game, I hit a couple of 3-pointers, missed a couple other shots, but it was progress from where I've been. I'm gaining some confidence there. So small thing, but that was a win for me this week. So it was fun to see that consistency paying off a little bit.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. So my thorn is probably going to be relatively obvious to you all, but our producer did not get eaten by a bear, like Justin said in our tweet yesterday. My computer just decided to be slower than I don't know, molasses on a hot summer day, or so. I guess that would be quick. So molasses on a cold winter day. It was.
There you go.
It was loading up extremely slow. It was not doing anything I wanted it to. It took a while. I was able to run a couple of benchmark tests on it and get a little idea of what the issue was, which is just purely a hardware issue. So a couple of the components of my computer, I now have on a list of things that I'll want to upgrade when it'll be not a time where I'm spending a bunch of money on new furniture and things like that for an upcoming move. So hopefully before too long, I can make those couple upgrades. Most of my computer's working fine. There's just 2 parts that are a little underperforming. So that caused the hiccups, but cleaning up my computer and all, got it back going so that we could record tonight, which of course I'm happy about, but it was a bummer for last night to run into all that. So that is definitely a thorn for me for this week. But then my seed, as I mentioned, month out from the new move, the move to the new place and all, starting to get things together. And fortunately, working at an apartment complex with some extra furniture that they're trying to offload. My boss told me today that I was going to buy some of our extra bar stools that we had for our countertop and all. I was talking to our VP who was there today for some meetings and different stuff. And she's like, just you can have them. I'm like,
there you go.
All right. I was ready to shell out $30 a bar stool. I was fine with it. But yeah, free furniture. That free good furniture. Not all free furniture is good. Free good furniture is great. So
He's great, yeah.
So that's my seed. Just getting ready for the move. I'm excited about it. Looking forward to that. Just a month away from today, actually. So yeah, coming up before we know it. But that is my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week. Justin, how's your week been? What's going on?
Going pretty good, I have to say. A couple of positives here on my Rose, Thorn, and Seed. So my Rose here, we got a pretty good review from a client. He was a gentleman who came and stopped in. He lives out of state. Just really kind words. So that was really nice. My thorn for this week is
Wait,
more of
hold on.
a.
So
Go
is
ahead.
he someone who would be a potential repeat customer or similar to the okay, I was gonna say or similar to the one you talked about recently
Hmm.
where it was the other person in the massage therapy industry. So
And the well, they put it under anonymous, so it easily could have been that individual, it could have been another individual. But yeah, it was just really nice to get that feedback and just, continue keep it on, because it seems like things are going pretty well, which is contrary to maybe some beliefs that we had talked about previously.
nice.
But yeah, so that was fun. My thorn, I will touch on something that I probably talked about 2 weeks ago or so, where I had an inkling that too much caffeine and was maybe contributing to some like stress and teeth grinding and like pressure in my head. So I took the last week to like wean myself off of coffee and caffeine. Today was my first day without a cup of coffee, and surprisingly, like I did pretty well. I didn't feel any of like the classic symptoms that I thought I would have. So yeah, overall, I think it's going to be a positive change. It's a test. You may see me in the future with a cup of coffee, but yeah, I just kind of want to see what life is like without it. Because as far back as I can remember, I've been having at least a cup of coffee a day, sometimes two. So I just kind of want to get back to my own rhythm, like a base rhythm, and just see what that feels like. So more of a silver lining than a true thorn. My seed, which kind of goes along with this, I've got my green medical card in the mail, and so I'm hoping with like talking to the physicians there and like really kind of honing up on the products that I'm purchasing. Hopefully, I can use that primarily to worry about any like aches, ailments that I may have. So I'm really not like leaning on that, but that's kind of where my head's going to be at in the near future here, just doing some experimenting with that kind of stuff. But overall, I think I'm going to have a cup of coffee again. Because I just fucking enjoy it, and it's like
Yeah.
it's tough to reconcile that. So I'll just have to pick my moments. But yeah, overall, I think it's just been a pretty good week. Looking forward to talking about the Australian Grand Prix. Unless you had any.
Well, what are your? I'm sure I have a feeling that you have a similar outlook as another one of my friends when it comes to coffee. Keurigs thoughts.
I use them every day,
Oh, okay.
multiple times a day.
Because I was gonna say my one of my other friends, part of his trouble with that he would have with drinking less coffee or just one cup is he makes a pot like every day.
Right.
And so like I was gonna say the Keurig is a great way to dodge that by not having just extra coffee sitting there that you're like, well, someone's got to drink it, but if you're using a Keurig already, it's then
Yeah, and I'm just like
moot point.
crunching through fucking 5 cups, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
fucking, which is a wonderful little like tactile thing, by the way, where you like thunk and you like
pops out
and
little that little divot in it and
yeah, and that's kind of dangerous because they add it's like Pavlovian almost.
yeah, that's
So
fair.
yeah, that's gonna be tough to avoid, but here we are.
Yeah, life moves on. Slightly, maybe more tired initially in the morning, but with some good water and stretching, I'm sure you are raring to go in no time.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I just have to shift the habit. And I was already
Yeah,
thinking about that today, where the first thing, like, I just got to change the first thing I do in the morning. And I think that should just be go out, go grab a glass of water, take my vitamin, and then just like go right in and brush my teeth. Because here's another like gross health note is I would put off brushing my teeth until I was done having my first cup of coffee.
I mean, not that gross. It's like you'd just rather not have coffee breath for whoever you're meeting out in the world that day.
Sure, but I'm also just like stank breath drinking my coffee. So it's like wins in a
That's
lot of
fair. That's
places.
fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we can move through, but it's definitely good to hear that you're like the weaning off the coffee did not go too badly. You didn't have the headaches or the fucking jitters and shakes or anything. So definitely a positive.
I mean, we don't necessarily have to go there, but like, this ain't my first rodeo, homie.
I mean, but still, like, I think that's the most common, especially the headaches is like the most common, like thing for caffeine withdrawal. So it doesn't sound like you were that bad enough to have that kind of thing going on, but still, just generally,
of, like, decaf in the interim to like,
yeah,
you know.
But definitely good in general. So
I appreciate that.
But before we get into the Australian Grand Prix, I just wanted to briefly mention I watched the IndyCar series, the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach on Sunday. It was Sunday afternoon. It was on, and of course with the Australian Grand Prix being at the lovely time of 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, I was able to watch it without any other distractions going on. But it was pretty fun, and I think, like, watching it, I really hope that you can find a way to watch it, whether it's through, like, a streaming something or whatnot.
I did see the highlights.
You did? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Because, like, it's a lot of fun. I do still think that the drivers in F1 are just more exciting to watch in general, but IndyCar adds its own excitement into it as well, with like the push to pass button and everything, and having to like use it sparingly. You only have a certain amount of time on it. I know I've talked about it previously talking about IndyCar, but when you see F1 have like what we had at the Australian Grand Prix with 3 different DRS zones where every single lap you could potentially like go for someone or potentially end up in this ridiculous DRS train. Like, you don't have that worry of a DRS train in IndyCar because, I mean, yeah, people can have slipstreams and all, but at the same time, everyone has the ability to DRS or push to pass at any time. And since you have to use it so like sparingly, it forces people to be more conscious about that and to kind of take advantage of opportunities that they have to try and pass people on those straight stretches and everything. Whereas in F1, you can just like go for it again and again and again as long as you have DRS. So I think it's like a pretty unique part of IndyCar. So I've started to like appreciate that a bit. And then of course in the race, our boy, friend of the show, Romain Grosjean, finished a nice P2. So I was excited to see that too. He drove a really nice race. So that was fun to watch.
Well, and it was after a bunch of drivers kind of put it into the wall, and he was the benefit of kind of just getting through the mess and avoiding trouble, right?
Yeah, for a decent bit. There were a number of drivers that just ended up spinning out. One car ended up in this like flower bed in the middle of a roundabout that was on the circuit. And so he took advantage of it, but like otherwise he was already up in for most of the race like P5, P6. Yeah. So he was like he was towards the front of the grid driving well, and then got good brakes and put it up there on second. I thought he was going to have a run at first for a little bit, but like I had mentioned, he had used all his push to pass earlier in the race, and was down there at the end with no time left on it. But nonetheless, a really impressive running for him. So that was awesome. I love to see him performing well. And then Marcus Erickson, who's another F1 driver, he's driven pretty well in the season so far. So I think he ended up not finishing this race due to some contact and everything damage. But he's it's cool to see some of these guys that like you don't really, or who have previously been in F1 and like dropped out for whatever reason, still racing. And since IndyCar is so similar, it's easy for me to kind of jump over to and just watch.
Oh yeah, big time. I think the most exciting thing about IndyCar is it seems like how close they're able to race. It feels like the pack is more bunched up for a longer percentage of the race.
A lot more, yeah.
And that's super exciting, which, you know, it does factor in, well, I guess when you combine that with the push to pass where you're really choosing your moments and you may be using it intermittently throughout a race to get little overtakes done here and there. I think another really exciting thing is it seems like the track designs understand how close they're going to be racing, where it felt like turn 1 and turn 2, it's massive, and you see them like 3, 4, 5 cars wide, all trying to get through there. And to me, that's just like heads up design and heads up racing from the drivers. So yeah, that element of it is really exciting. And yeah, I thought it was fun to see Romain Grosjean just doing so well in the race. But oddly enough, like that's not uncommon. I think he has done quite well since he's joined IndyCar.
Yeah, definitely. It's just being his second season and all, and this is going to be his first season, I think, competing across like all races. Like initially last year, he decided at the start of the year that he was not going to do circle track races because of the high speeds and potential safety issues after his crash in F1. He didn't want to stress his family out too much, I think, but I think this season he's planning to do a full year of all the races, like really competing in terms of the points and everything, to hopefully make a run at the title for the Drivers' Championship in IndyCar, which is pretty cool. He's in 6th right now for that, only a few races into the season, so looking forward to kind of following along and periodically bringing it up here on the podcast with how he's looking in the season. So
yeah, that's awesome. I'm super happy to sprinkle in the other other sports and motorsport from around the world, because obviously we focus on just a couple of things here, but it is fun to bring those in. And yeah, I was remiss that I wasn't able to catch it when you had reached out, because obviously Romain Grosjean is our favorite IndyCar driver just by proxy. He's got to be. I don't know any of the other ones. So yeah, I'll look forward to catching more of it.
Definitely, but we can of course get into the F1 race from this past weekend, the Australian Grand Prix. Starting out with qualifying, like, give me your thoughts. What were you thinking as you were watching through? Anything that stuck out? I thought there were a couple of interesting points throughout.
It seemed like Alonso was going to be like in a much better position in Q1 and Q2. Did not end up working out for him. It seemed like the Alpine had a lot of pace anyway, but yeah, overall it's just really surprising to see that much parity in qualifying, and it's not often we have that.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. Like, he was on a ridiculous lap until he ended up binning it there, going into the gravel and slowly bumping into the wall. But he looked really good, was putting in some fast sectors. I mean, of course, there's the other points of interest from quali, like the Stroll going into Latifi in Q1. That was that's tough to I kind of feel bad in a way. I judge Stroll pretty hard right off the bat, because I feel like a lot of the viewership and announcers pretty quickly saw that it seemed to be his fault for not looking in his mirrors. But his reaction on the radio was to instantly start blaming Latifi. And I think I was a bit hard on him at first when I heard that. I'm like, bro, come on. But later on when they interviewed him, I think he had realized that like the situation and all, and kind of changed his tune on it a little bit to just be like, yeah, like I didn't expect him to be there, and I think it's that instinctual reaction when something happens in a race or in quali that they're like almost have to advocate for themselves immediately. Right. It's like a gut reaction to be like, it couldn't be my fault, because like you're trying to dodge penalties, you're trying to dodge whatever you can, like just as a competitor and all. And so seeing him react that way, but then like kind of change his tune, I was like, man, I've probably gave him a little bit of a little too hard initial reaction to him. So that was rough for Latifi. Like, he has just had some rough fucking luck so far this season, and whether it be his driving the car or just bad luck, he's not having a good time so far.
Yeah, and I think that instance in particular was one of, he may not, he probably wasn't supposed to try and stick it up that inside, but yeah, overall he is having a really, really tough time of it, and just making the Williams team struggle, because when he's making all these mistakes, like, they're obviously not putting themselves in points-winning positions, they're not putting themselves anywhere near the top of the grid. So for Latifi to be making these kind of mistakes or contributing to these kind of, let's say, track conditions, it is kind of disheartening, especially he's been in the sport for a little while now. So it is unfortunate that he is, having such errors.
Yeah, well, and I think it's tough to watch it between Williams and Aston Martin, because Aston Martin's having their own fair share of bad luck too. I mean, Seb Vettel crashing out in practices, them trying to rebuild his car. The only reason he got onto the track in qualifying was because Stroll and Latifi collided and all, and the red flag gave their team enough time for him to get the car in working order, get up to P18 on the starting grid, and then to bin it in the race. So the amount of work those Aston Martin engineers and their mechanics put in this past weekend was, I hope they're getting paid overtime.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I wonder what those overtime wages are like. Yeah, gosh darn, man, they're just having such a heck of a time.
Yeah, it's rough, but that kind of stuff, I mean, they're fighting to not be in last place right now, the two of them. And after this week's race, it's 1 point Williams and 0 to Aston Martin. So I mean, you have to hope that both teams can just kind of build some improvement and progress across the season. Definitely a tough start for both sides, though, in a lot of cases. But otherwise, from quali, I mean, we saw some really good performance out of a number of drivers. I thought Leclerc drove just an insane last lap to go and get pole in the race. It was also just so bizarre hearing them say, like, oh, Lewis Hamilton is the driver at risk, like, in Q2 to potentially not make Q3. That's such a bizarre thing, and I'm just having adjusted to it. And it's not like, I know I've talked my fair share of trash on Lewis and everything, but it's because he's the best, and so, like, you don't have to root for him, but you got to respect him, kind of thing. But seeing him having some struggles and all, like, I don't get any joy out of that either. Like, I want to see him be competitive. I want to see as many drivers as possible competing at the top and making it really exciting and kind of interesting. So that's just been weird, even though the Mercedes team has, like, gotten some good finishes in general. There's definitely still a lot of struggles there for the team.
Yeah, especially in the qualifying laps, like the one-shot pace where you're low fuel on the soft tires or whatever. Obviously, that's a very different setup than what your race day setup looks like.
Yeah.
With with high fuel, different tire, blah blah blah. But there is an element to, like you were saying, on race day, like we had Russell P3, Hamilton P4. So even though they don't have it in the qualifying pace, it's clear they have it in the race, and their tire strategies are good, and it seems like their pit stops are going pretty well, where they're not catching these punishments during the race. So 3 and 4 looks pretty good for a team that is like concerned about their their pace going into each weekend. Where they're not just super confident like they have been previously. But it's clear that Russell and Hamilton are still able to get something out of the car, just not on qualifying day.
Yeah, and I have to ask, I know I heard some talk about Lewis like being unhappy with the team and all this past week. Did you hear about that, or no, like hear about what it was about? Like I heard, okay, because I know during the race he was frustrated because George jumped him due to just like lucky timing in terms of safety car and everything. And like that's just stuff that happens. I mean, it's the opposite essentially happened to Checo in one of the earlier races. I think in Saudi Arabia, where he dropped from P1 to like P4 just because a safety car came out right after he had pitted. Like that stuff happens. And Lewis, when he was behind George in the race over the team radio, he just seemed really like, it's like, how did he jump us, man? And they're just like, he just got lucky with the pit stop. Like that's all it was, kind of thing. So that was a little like odd, because I heard there was a little, or I read somewhere something about Lewis being a little unhappy with something with the team, but I never looked into it really, so I didn't know if you had heard. That was just out of curiosity, kind of thing.
I mean, maybe unhappy with the like performance of the car or something like that, but I'll be honest, I tend to like tune out overall to the like post-race interviews and this and that. It is just like the most generic answers you ever get.
Yeah.
And for the gems, I don't know if it's so much worthwhile, but I didn't get a sense either on the broadcast or anything about him having quality
it didn't
sentiment.
No, it didn't seem like it was a lot. It seemed like he was irritated more so just in the race and all, but I understand that, because like every driver gets frustrated during races at some point. Like Kimmy's pit crew telling him he has a 5-second penalty and him going, "For what?" and yelling into the microphone. Like they all get upset when stuff doesn't go their way or luck breaks the other way and everything. But I just thought it weird to read that like just general statement about Lewis being unhappy afterwards, and I was like, I kind of tried to just be like, if it's actually serious, like I'll see more about it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
But I wasn't sure if you had seen that at all. But yeah, and in qualies, the other point thing that I had noticed is just like the kind of slide from Haas down to where they're at currently after a pretty hot start. I mean, obviously, race to race, things are going to be different. The cars handle different tracks better than others and all of that. So not to say that Haas is like they're out of it for the season or anything, but I didn't expect them to drop as far down the grid as they did with Mick and Kevin Magnussen being down towards the bottom of the start after a pretty impressive just like general start to the season from what Haas has been. So
well, and even though their overall qualifying and their time leading up to that wasn't the best, I do have to say for Mick going into the race, I believe he started 13th and he ended 13th, so he didn't I don't think he lost anything in the race overall. Um, However, Kevin Magnussen, I think, should be maybe getting a little bit more out of the car. But yeah, overall, we have seen them. We have seen them slide down a little bit. However, it is pretty exciting seeing Mick getting into Q2. I think that really bodes well for the future. It just may be a little bit slower progress than we thought.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's just gonna happen. Like they've got a lot of good work done on the car, but it's still everything's a work in progress. No one knew how their car was actually gonna test until they were out on the track and all. So I'm sure they'll be continuing to improve, bring upgrades throughout the season. But definitely, I expected them to be a little bit higher up, and to be honest, like on the flip side, I expected the McLaren car. I said it last week during the episode. I was like, I don't think that 2 weeks is enough time to get that McLaren car where it needs to be for race weekend. And Lando and Danny Ricks in P5, P6, really like a pretty good spot for them to be in overall. Daniel Ricciardo was a little bit he sounded a little sad on the radio in the post race, which I thought was odd because after such a drastic improvement and being at his home race picking up some points, I was like, oh, he's gonna be hyped, and he was just like, thanks guys, good race. That was and he had these long pauses. It was surprised me a little bit, but in my opinion, great result for the McLaren team for this week.
Yeah, big time. I'm curious if there isn't some, not regret, but just feeling like, oh, if he had a better car, maybe he could have won his home race. I know there's a lot of pressure on drivers to get results at their home race, and obviously it was the first time back in Australia in a long while.
I think that's part of it too. Like last year, they had a car that I think he felt like he could have done something great with, like at his home race, but with it not happening last year, now he's like, man, like what could have been. But
Sure. I tend to imagine drivers not holding too much of that. Although closely after a race, I can believe those thoughts drift in. But I imagine we will see him back and with a pep in his step for the first Italian Grand Prix.
yeah, I expect so. But awesome result from them in my opinion.
Agreed.
Leclerc drove an absolutely perfect race. I just I don't see how. The only thing he could have done better is on the second safety car restart, getting going, not letting Max get as close on his tail. He had a little slide from the rear, lost some grip and everything on the restart initially, but that Ferrari, the pace was awesome this past weekend. So first Grand Slam for Charles with the pole position, fastest lap, and race win, leading every lap of the race.
Oh, there you go.
So just really, really solid race from him. And then a few other people. I mean, Checo had a really nice race. Not a mistake here or there. Sent it a little too deep on. I forget what turn that was that he missed the braking zone. I think it was like turn 11 or something.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were putting it off there.
Yeah.
Over the course of the weekend as well.
Yeah, that was something I noticed quite a bit. I think we had Vettel, we had Magnussen, we had Checo. I feel like there were probably a couple more that and that's just in the race, not even thinking of qualies or anything else. But the other one, that sent it a little too deep right around there was Sainz, of course, going in that first. I think that was first lap, wasn't it? Or was it second lap?
It was first or second, but yeah, it was really early. And honestly, that was a dangerous one, man. Like seriously,
Yeah.
he came so close to whapping one of the. I think that was like one of the Haas or the Alfa
Alfa
Romeos coming
Romeos,
through.
yeah. I
Oh boy.
don't remember if it was Guan Yu Zhou or Zhou Guan Yu or if it was Botas, but yeah, he just like sliding across. That was it was like the Matrix with when Keanu's dodging bullets. That Alfa Romeo just kind of just sliding through there as a full F1 car just slides out. Like that's terrifying. I can't even imagine.
Well, terrifying to the degree that was just one quick maneuver and they were out of the way. But I think the timing more anything, it was like a Frogger moment where they were just like they were sliding through right as they were passing something similar. But yeah, that was pretty scary, and it's tough to understand like what went on there. Although maybe if we look back, we do see Carlos like locking up his tires. Maybe he does go off.
Yeah, well, and we saw him. We saw him have a really rough start to drops 5 places from P9, which is already. I mean, he had an unfortunate circumstance in qualies anyway with the Alonso red flag coming out right before he was finishing a really solid hot lap.
Yeah,
But then when he came back out, just couldn't put a great time in. So starting P9 slides 5 spots back, and from what I looked at after the race and all, it sounds like he was pushing a little extra hard
yeah.
to try and make up those places, knowing he's in the Ferrari, the car's like raring to go. It's a great track with like for their car, their setup, especially, and how well their car had been able to perform through the weekend. I think he panicked a little bit after dropping back that many spots, and then tried to outbrake people and couldn't do it. So,
Well, and that's kind of what I was like the point that I was trying to make, where it's like, yeah, it felt very hasty, it felt very rushed, it felt like one of those moments from last season where Max boiled it into a corner, like trying to get by Lewis, where it's like, I don't think you were ever gonna make that there, my guy. Maybe just a little bit of patience.
yeah, and I mean that's like the part that blows my mind, because we know how, obviously, especially after seeing the end of the race, we know how well that Ferrari was racing on this track. Like, we know the kind of pace it had and everything. So had he been a little bit more just like cautious, just like, okay, this is where I'm at, let me start working my way through the field, working my way up the grid, that kind of attitude would have been probably much better suited to the scenario. But it is what it is. I think it's a learning moment. Sainz is still like overall a relatively young driver. He's getting to that kind of mid career, like early veteran status at this point. But I mean, everyone has things to learn, and he's been towards the front of the grid a lot. So I think that's an experience that he can hopefully utilize if he's in a similar position down the road.
Yeah, where you just don't have to be that aggressive that early. Well, I mean, I guess maybe some drivers are. He was just a little, just a little overeager.
Yeah, you can be aggressive. You just have to toe the line a little bit better,
Right.
and like it's learning the limits of the car, limits of the track, all those things. But
Much better said.
yeah, but I know. I mean, not. I think we're saying the same thing. We're on the same
Sure.
page and all. But of course, then just on other things from the race, Max, another unfortunate DNF. He is now further back in the point standings than. Or the gap between, I guess, P1 and P2 is larger than the gap ever was last season between first and second already.
Yep.
With Leclerc in P1 and George Russell in P2. So so props to George. But yeah, Max is right now. I think Red Bull and Max both together are just looking at this and like, we just need to finish races. We need to get
Yeah,
points.
seriously, and like not even in first, not even in second. They just got to finish the races. Like that is a bunch of power units now just roasted
Yeah.
from the Red Bull and well, I don't necessarily want to say the AlphaTauri, but it's gonna stick in my they're gonna stick in my head
Oh
together
yeah,
because they're sister teams.
definitely.
Regardless if it was like a different issue or whatever. But what I'm trying to get at is like, man, that is a lot of engines down on a year where they're supposed to be taking over production, and this is going to be the new thing. And we are Honda powered, Red Bull power engine, and man, not doing it because, like you said, yeah, they just have to finish races. This is not a good outing for the world champ.
Yeah, I mean, and the car has good pace too. Like that, I think that's
It looks insane.
it's probably the most frustrating part for Max in general is that he's
Right.
been running at the top of the grid in both like he's won the only race that he finished, and then the other two he's running up in the podium positions until the engine just kind of gives out on him, and
Right.
it's unfortunate. It's I'm sure frustrating for him, but hopefully, I mean, I want to at least see him have a shot to defend his championship title. I think that's part that just sucks because like I feel like that's something that makes it even more exciting. Like the upcoming whoever's like P2, P3, like the championship battle, they're trying to overtake the championship leader from the previous year, the guy who won it all, and like he's just not even had the opportunity to put himself in a position to fight for it just
Right.
due to car trouble. So and I mean it just also will overall effect later in the season too, as he does get new power units, change the gearbox, everything. Like he's gonna hit that limit much sooner before he has to start taking penalties, and so all of a sudden those P2 starts that or potential poles that he's racing for in those qualifying laps, all of a sudden he could be starting seventh, eighth on the grid just because he's having to take on a new power unit from some lack of reliability. So it's tough to see, but it just kind of is what it is right now. We hope, or at least I know you and I are hoping that Red Bull can kind of turn it around and figure out some of these issues that are happening.
Yeah, big time. And for reasons not for reasons not of bias, like I'm kind of with you where I do just want to see the competitive teams do well. However, if they're not competitive for that reason, there is some level of excitement in that too. Like it feels like there's a lot of jeopardy then going into every weekend if you are a Red Bull fan. But then
Yeah.
from the like Ferrari perspective, you're getting like I can't imagine the relief that Ferrari fans are feeling when they see stuff like that happen. Just like another win, like bro.
Yeah,
But
and I
yeah,
mean Leclerc looked awesome, but yeah, it
oh, he
definitely.
deserves it.
I'm sure it absolutely had some of the Tifosi like oh okay now like don't have to worry as much.
Right, like oh yeah, we have some
Yeah,
breathing room. So from like it does create some jeopardy, but I think overall the more it happens and hopefully it doesn't, it is just going to make it harder and harder to keep or close the gap or keep the gap, depending on what the spread is like. But I will say this about the engine penalties: it seems like there are some other drivers that are having problems, especially like the Williams, especially like the Alpine, the teams that are having accidents. Those components are going to go way quicker, and Max may end up getting lucky, and teams may end up getting lucky with some real contenders being knocked back just because they have to take new engines.
Yeah, definitely. And it could happen to other teams throughout the year. You could see Ferrari or Mercedes or McLaren or anyone else start to have some different issues. You don't hope for that, but it so easily could happen in a season like this with new regulations. There's all these changes. There's new components and all being added to the cars. So we've got a very long season still left ahead of us, 20 more races. I'm excited about all of them. I'm looking forward to it. But before we move on, I did want to, of course, bring up the driver of the day from the Australian Grand Prix, Mr. Alex Albon.
I was going to say, if he didn't win it, he was definitely mine.
Yeah, I mean, that man, I am so impressed with him so far with this season. He definitely does not have the most competitive car there in the Williams, but that was just a master stroke of strategy. And honestly, I still can't figure out how he made those tires last for 57 laps.
Well, it makes me believe that the tires have way more longevity in them than they let us believe, but I think that's because they don't ever even want to push them to that point just for strategic reasons, maybe not even safety reasons.
Yeah.
Although I know there were scenarios last year where maybe there were some safety issues depending on the compound of the tire. But, yeah, just really impressive. 57 laps on, what was that, a set of hard tires or mediums?
Yeah, hards from the beginning. But, I mean, it also, starting in last definitely gives you the opportunity to, I think, what you're saying, a lot of the issues or lack of longevity with those different tire sets is due to the fact that these drivers are racing hard on them from the start. Cold hard tires and putting in a grind of a lap, battling out in each corner, late braking, trying to hold position, all of that. That's why they talk about on the out laps when people are changing to the hard tires. We've heard different teams tell their drivers, hey, go a little easier on this out lap because you're going to put too much wear on the tires until they heat up. So starting in last place, you do have that flexibility to be okay, I'm not going to put a lot of wear on these tires. I'm just going to drive casually, keep as close pace as I can, but not damage them. And then he seemed to just find a zone. I was looking at one of his interviews after the race, and he said that the last 20 laps or so, it was generally the tires were going through their normal kind of degrading throughout the race, but he said the last 20 laps felt like quali type laps. You're at lower fuel at that point. You're just he said it was just clicking for him. He was just awesome. Lap after lap, smooth sailing, no issues, no graining, just cruising. And so it's pretty incredible how the differences in those tires can be based on tire compounds, but even you said, year to year, the thought of anyone putting 57 laps on a set of tires last year is terrifying with the number of blowouts and things like that we had from worn tires. So
right. Well, it is interesting. I'm curious if you go back and look at his lap times. I'm curious if how it felt in the car to him was evident in the times, if he was shaving off time going around each lap in that segment that he was talking about. I'm curious if the time checks out to what he was feeling in the car.
Yeah, I'd have to. So Albon, so lap 54 was his fastest lap. He had overall the 12th fastest lap, so up there in terms of just general. I mean, the pace itself, of course, is everyone's back. Like Leclerc's fastest lap was 3 seconds off his qualifying fastest lap. So
Right.
like you're not going to get that kind of pace, but I mean he was running similar laps to like the McLarens during that last stint before he pitted with them on fresher tires and all. So that I think it's just so odd that a Williams car that struggled for pace and everything throughout the season is just able to get that far up the grid, and especially even that far up in terms of fastest lap for each car during the race. Like 12th fastest lap overall is not what I would expect from the Williams car.
No, not at all. And he put it P10, I'm pretty sure,
Yep.
after having to pit and just take a second type of tire just for the rules. But yeah, I was very impressed with that drive and well deserved for a driver of the day there. That was fun.
Yeah, big point for Albon, his first point with Williams back in F1. Williams' first point of the season, and just like that, they're in P9 in the constructors. So
Just like that, they are not last in the top 10.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
feels pretty good.
they were definitely a top 10 team the whole time, though.
But yeah, if you want to catch any of the Australian Grand Prix with us live, you can go back and watch the Tall and Short of It Race Companion for the 2022 Australian Grand Prix on YouTube and Spotify. That is our little bonus that we do. Obviously, we're going to have some other bonuses coming at you, but that one is live on YouTube right now. 2022 Australian Grand Prix Race Companion. Check it out.
Absolutely. Take a look. Watch along with us. Throw us on in the background. Throw the race up on your TV and listen along. Maybe we'll have some good insights. Maybe you'll think we're just two guys enjoying racing. Either way, it was a fun time. So take a look. But moving right along, we had some more League of Legends playoffs this past week. Where did you want to get started, I guess?
What do we have at the top here? I think, well, we didn't have any LCK. Let's just start at the NALCS, just talk about some recent results, because obviously we don't have the big series to talk about. We'll have 4 more of like the bigger like main event types. So we have the quarterfinal rounds with Team Liquid and 100 Thieves, and then also Cloud9 versus EG. The losers of those get seeded into losers bracket or like losers final.
Loser of TL 100 Thieves plays winner C9 EG.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Right, and then the winner of TL 100 Thieves plays the winner of whatever the lower bracket seeds out to be. But that's all in the future. We haven't gotten there yet. However, the losers bracket is not as exciting, and obviously I think the matches went pretty standard. We had a 3-1 for EG and a 3-0 for Cloud9 against Golden Guardians. EG won against FlyQuest.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was a little just surprised from the EG FlyQuest series based on EG's performance against Liquid on the top of the bracket. Performing so well against the top team of the regular season, I expected EG to come down to the lower bracket, have that fire and that kick in the pants to just go through and sweep, similarly to how Cloud9 did with Golden Guardians. Cloud9 just kind of ran through it pretty quickly. I mean, Golden Guardians didn't play poorly, but Cloud9 I think we have seen is just the better team overall. So that was a pretty lopsided series, but FlyQuest seemed to hang in it decently. They put in a nice win in Game 2. I never really felt like... I mean, okay, not that I never felt like they were out of it, but at the same time, they played it a lot closer than I just really expected it to. A lot of the games dragging out, like into that mid 30-minute, high 30-minute, and the win that FlyQuest got going into the 51st minute of the matchup. It just wasn't as decisive of a victory as I would have expected out of EG. But they definitely, I mean, they pulled it out. They got that 3-1. They didn't look bad. Just FlyQuest looked pretty solid too. So.
Yeah, and so now we'll see the Cloud9 versus EG matchup, which I think will be maybe more even than either two of the other matchups previously.
Yeah.
I think maybe some of the pick and ban will not line up so easily. I think EG may have a tough time banning against Cloud9 just because they do have the interesting weird picks that they can go to. However, after seeing what they did against 100 Thieves, if they are really actually pressured in game after a, what would you say, not questionable, but maybe risky, harder to pull off pick and ban. If they do the same thing that they did against 100 Thieves, where they just kind of did like the salty run back and tried the same comp again, I don't think that kind of stuff is going to work against EG. So
yeah, not going to fly in my opinion. I think that Cloud9 did a much better job in their pick ban this past weekend with the series, getting Blabber onto Lee Sin and being able to be proactive in all three games. Personally, I felt like that was a huge aspect for them to be able to just like look forward and put in solid performance and get one of their best players on a champion that he can actually just like get the ball rolling and make some plays. Similarly, I mean, that's what we saw Closer do against them in the series between Cloud9 and 100 Thieves. So I think that pick is going to be a contested one for 100 Thieves as well as for Cloud9 going forward. I wouldn't be surprised to see it banned. So it's really figuring out that pick and ban and adjusting because, like you said, I think Cloud9 looked like a pretty solid team when they had their pick and ban together, but when they didn't, it was just fucking brutal.
Exactly. Now, to kind of use the Lee Sin pick as a jumping off point, I think Lee Sin became very pivotal in the next series that we want to talk about, kind of the main topic here for League of Legends. We wanted to talk about the V5 versus Top Esports series over in LPL. And by my eye, I think it was TN on the Lee Sin that really helped to solidify those late match games for Top Esports. Because honestly, by my eye, Carso was the most dominant player in that server until TN was able to really get rolling on the Lee Sin, and then he just made it look like magic.
Yeah, I mean, he looked just disgusting on that pick, especially in the later games of the series. I mean, in game 4, he popped off with the 10-0-6 performance. Like the announcers were joking about it as he continued to get the last hits on those kills throughout. They're like, oh, and there's going to be a kill for and Tien with another kill, and he is 9-0.
It's just so funny hearing the casters talk about like kill steals and like, oh no, that kill's mine. Oh no, that kill's mine.
And I mean, I understand it to some extent too, because in that instance, like in competitive League of Legends, like Lee Sin falls off in terms of his late game super hard. So seeing him just continue to like not just like get kills, but also just get the last hits on kills that he didn't need to was like I do understand where they're coming from, but at the same time they just ran through that game. Like that was a not a speed run quite, but that was a quick game. And so that Lee Sin pick was it, I agree, kind of the turnaround in that game 4 that kind of set them back on the right track, moving along in the final games. So,
and then we can kind of put it in reverse here. Let's start from the top. Game 1, where we had V5 on the Karsa with the Hecarim, Control Mage in the mid lane, and just using Karsa's pressure just to try and be everywhere. Hecarim so fast, his clear speed so good. And I honestly think that was just a jungle dominant game, 1, 2, and 3 from Karsa. Like, it
100%.
was the Hecarim show, but the two kind of like key things in game 3 really shifted the dynamic of this series, and that's why it was so exciting, honestly. Like, it went all 5 rounds, and B, it was such, even in the games Top Esports won, even games 3, 4, and 5, V5 was like ahead for most of the game. They had most of the pressure. They had a lot of the like neutral control. I know there's like trading of Rift Heralds and Drakes and whatever, but honestly, like V5 is dominant in the early game. So I want to talk about how Top Esports was able to like kind of flip that aggression on their head and just start to win some fights. Like in game 3, getting Knight on Akali and Jackie Love on that Xayah. Dude, in that dragon fight, I think that was like the play of the game. Like, it was over for Top Esports if Jackie Love died in that fight.
Oh yeah, and there were also a number of fights where you're just seeing the Akali like staying alive just long enough to pick like one person off, but then the healing from getting that kill and all, and the spell vamp and everything, all of a sudden like ulting onto one person, getting the kill at like a quarter HP, and then all of a sudden Akali's half HP. And then she's chasing down the next person. And then she's hitting the E and dashing to him and hitting the Q on the next one. And just like going again and again and getting those cleanups. Like Knight played that out so well. And like you said, similarly, Jackie Love on the Xayah just staying alive, some great feather pulls.
Featherstorm. Oh, Featherstorm is the all.
That's
the pullback.
Yeah, just like locking people down, having like all that. I think it's Blade Collar maybe or something like that.
Yeah, you got it.
Pulling those back, getting the damage down, and like locking people up to. Oh, Justin. We lost your video?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. It's just me on the big screen for a hot sec. There we go. So, yeah, like Jackie Love played that out so well. And also, I have to give props to Photic for V5, because even in these losses, like he was playing as well as he could. I mean, games 1 and 2, he had a 10-0-5 KDA, like no deaths, playing perfectly, looking phenomenal. And then even in the loss in game 3, it goes 9-3-9. Like that was just a brawl, hitting back and forth throughout that game. And so I was very impressed with Top Esports mental just in general, being able to fight their way back. And I think that's like we had mentioned previously, that was kind of why that series was going to be so exciting. You have V5, who is this very dominant team throughout the regular season, looking really, really strong. I mean, if this was a regular season series between the two of them, V5 wins that 2-0, and then you move on to the next one. Like, having that best of 5 series, Top Esports was able to figure it out. They were never out of the matchups and everything, and just put in a really, really impressive run there. And it's not done yet. Like, that was a finals level series in my mind. And it was the quarterfinals, basically. Not even the semis, not the finals. That was a quarterfinal match. So we still have lots of good LPL League of Legends to get to watch. And did you watch the RNG JDG at all? I didn't catch that series, but I thought you might have.
Yeah, I saw the pretty much the full game 1 and full game 2. I pivoted over just so we were kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall it looked like JDG was really getting the better of RNG in the early stages, but obviously that series went all 5 games too, so there's just a lot of information that I don't have for that.
Yeah, 2 reverse sweeps though, which is
crazy.
Just nuts. But yeah, just for the V5 Top Esports series, did you have any other points that you wanted to mention, I guess, before we look over to Europe?
No, I just thought it was, I guess my final thoughts is I just thought it was fun seeing a reverse sweep in this manner, especially when the, V5 was, I think, heavily favored going into the series, and just even in every game, except for game 4, really, it was just V5 favored overall. And it just took slick moves from Top Esports to bring it out. So kudos to them, and I'm looking forward to watching them against RNG in the semis or semifinals or half quarter semifinals, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's semis. Or winners bracket finals, I guess.
There you go. Let's be specific here.
Yeah, so that'll be, I think, a really, really good series. Losers bracket, of course, we have V5 and JDG, so I think based on how they both started rolling in their series, that'll be interesting as well. JDG was a little bit further down in terms of their regular season. They were... Oh no! Well, not much down. They were 3rd place, tied with LNG. So we've definitely got some good matchups there with V5 and JDG as well. So lots of good League of Legends going forward. But
although I can't imagine we're gonna see Zeri anytime soon in LPL, though. That's okay.
I'm all right with it if we keep seeing some really good Xayah, Jinx, and Aphelios, and I like the Ahri as well, but
it's not an AD pick.
I think that they seem to have defaulted though back to the control mage mid, the Syndra, the Orianna, a lot of that kind of stuff. The Zoe came out, Victor. Right, they've defaulted back, and I don't know, at least in the V5 Top Esports series, and I think that's just, it could potentially be just the Knight versus Rookie matchup that both of them know that the other mid laner is really good and can snowball super hard, so no one really wanted to go after that pick that is high risk, high reward. Except for the game 3 Akali, which did end up working out, but I think that is, I think it might just be due to that matchup more so than the overall expectations for the LPL. I mean, let's see, in 4 out of the 5 games in RNG, JDG Ahri was picked in the mid lane, so. Yeah.
Well, and that's a pretty good point, especially if you look at the pick and bans for the V5 Top Esports series. There was a lot of mid lane pinching going on. There were so many mid lane bans.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it is just like it just speaks to the explosiveness of that mid lane.
definitely. So,
Yeah.
um, so some good matchups, but moving over to the LEC in Europe, we ended up having well, I guess which series did we had two this past week, or did we have three this past week that were?
I'm pretty sure there would have been a bunch this past weekend because G2 had to finish out their run, so we would have seen them play both Fnatic and RNG this past weekend, I think.
Yeah, okay, so that's what it was. I didn't remember if they had played the Rogue series, if Fnatic had played Rogue prior to uh last episode. So I'd have to
Not
look at the schedule.
100% sure.
We're gonna do a little fact checking here real quick. Bear with me for just a moment. We're gonna
But I think overall, the main storyline is like even regardless of when those matches were, like the massive storyline out of it is just the streak from G2.
Yeah,
Like
so
insane.
yeah, so last week we had seen Rogue beat Fnatic in the 3-2, and then Misfits had lost 0-3 to G2 to kind of start or continue G2's lower bracket run after beating Vitality. So this past week we had Fnatic G2, and then with G2's win, Rogue versus G2. So, but just in general, the performance from G2 was just unreal. I was extremely impressed with this run that they made through the lower bracket just to even make it to the finals.
Yeah, big time. And there were so many good plays that got them there, but overall I think one of the big strengths from them is when they pivoted to the Ornn pick in the top lane. I think that really did a brunt of their team fighting in the Fnatic and Rogue series. But even before that, they were utilizing some pretty interesting picks. But yeah, that Ornn coming in clutch for those last two series.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we should expect to see a bit more in some of the other regions as well. Like I don't expect all of I'm not saying that LEC is leading the way in terms of their picks and bans and all, but like the Ornn pick seems like it's really strong right now. You have the tankiness that you're kind of seeing compete with that heavy hitting explosive damage that you've got from the Gangplank, from the Jace, the Camille, those kinds of champions in the top lane. The Ornn handles that all very, very well. You can stay in lane pretty much indefinitely, being able to buy items in lane and everything. And so just Broken Blade's play on that pick throughout the last two series, especially. He had it four times in the last 6 games of their playoff run. Looked really, really good on it, and just was able to put in some solid performances. 7-1-7 and 1-0-7 against Fnatic, the 2 games he played it. Against Rogue when he played it, going 3-1-9 and then 4-2-11. Just that's some insane kind of numbers for a pick like Ornn, especially with the kills. Like I expect him to be getting plenty of assists, but the
Yeah, he
kill
was
numbers,
he
yeah.
was really setting them up, honestly. And I think another benefit of the Ornn that's like outside of the person playing it is the late game insurance that you get from selling those masterwork items to your carries. I think those stats go a long way in the late game. Like I think it's like thousands of dollars worth of stats that those masterworks get you. So I just think that's huge. The team fighting potential of that Ornhorn was insane. There were so many fights that were just straight up won off the back of him showing up, hitting the carries with the Ornhorn and knocking them out. So yeah, I think Ornn was a really, really big player for the team. But overall, I thought Caps looked great on the RE pick when he played it. He was pretty instrumental, I would say. But yeah, overall, it was just an exciting run from G2.
Yeah, and the other note that I just had from the playoffs in general was Flackid, who this is his rookie season in the LEC. He was picked up by G2 to replace Reckless after this last season. Just was having a unreal kind of run through these playoffs. I mean, I just was pulling up his numbers. So just starting, not even going all the way back to the Vitality series, starting in the series against Misfits, he didn't die a single time in that series, was playing... he played 3 different champions in their 3-0. He had the Xayah, he had the Aphelios, he had the Jinx. In their matchup versus Fnatic, he only died 3 times in that series. And in Game 2 went 7-0-5. And then even in the finals as well, 4-2-6, 5-0-8, 0-4-18. Even in Game 3, not getting the kills, but just still doing a phenomenal job. 18 assists as an 80 carry. Like, you've got to be having some longevity in the team fights to be able to pick up that many assists. So super, super impressive from a rookie. I'm not super hyped on G2 for MSI. I think that there's still plenty of difficulty or tough matchups that they're going to have, but I think that they are in a really good form right now going into that. I'd love to see them keep it, because I think, unfortunately, I think their lineup itself is not necessarily going to compete with the T1s, with whoever comes out of the LPL, with whoever comes out of the NA. No, I'm kidding about that last one. But I think that the LCK and the LPL, definitely there's a skill gap there. But if G2 can keep this kind of form, I think that would be awesome to just see what they can do. And I think the knowledge that most people see the skill gap, that the analysis is just they're just not quite as good. They're still really, really phenomenal League of Legends players, but there's a difference between them and the top of the LCK and LPL. I think that's also a good thing for them, like low expectations and like keep the ball rolling. So I'm excited to see how they do after just an insane lower bracket playoff run.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I would just like to comment. I think the play of the game and the play of the run was Yankos at the very end of it. He was screaming as he was putting his shoe on, like it was very like absent-minded. He was just like, yeah, and you could see his like leg coming up as he was putting his shoe on. It was fucking hilarious. It was so funny.
I didn't realize he was a barefoot stage player.
Yeah, he takes his shoes off every time. You can see him like putting them on really quick before he like has to get up and go.
I mean, I can appreciate that. I swap back and forth between my moccasin slippers and bare feet, so it gotta be comfy. So
gotta be comfy up there, and Yankos definitely was.
Screaming while you're putting your shoe on is definitely a good clip though.
It was awesome. Definitely play of the series for me. But yeah, G2 versus Rogue, man, 3-0'd them. That was exciting stuff.
Yeah,
Wamne had nothing to say.
Well, and I think that was like, it was the big test. Like I said last week, Rogue has made it to the finals before, and they weren't able to pull it out. They've kind of always been like right there on the cusp, but G2 just continued their long-standing dominance with another split win in the championship there. So
does that make Rogue chokers? Are they chokers, dude?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, different people, same org. It's like, does Dignitas always throw a bear in play, or do they just end up with players that have the same kind of like fundamental issue? It's I don't know.
Damn, that's a philosophical question I can't answer.
Yeah. I mean, Dignitas was throwing Barons for a long, long time from Skara on, so it's been a minute.
And Saint Vicious.
That
is historically, I think, one of the better handles.
Saint was Curse, right?
I think he was Curse.
Yeah. Okay. But no, Saint, definitely a good name.
Pretty good. Pretty fucking good.
Now we're down the list a little bit when you've got Misfits with Neon and some of the other just like more out there names like Saint Vicious. That's like an OG. That's like a Call of Duty XX Demon Slayer 69 420 kind of name.
He still exists. Oh, he is still out there slaying demons, man.
So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing G2 and just kind of how they stack up. I don't have high expectations, but like I said, I think for their team that's a good thing. So
sure.
But did you have any more notes from the League of Legends world?
No, not really. We just have a couple more series left for LPL, a couple more series for NALCS, and then we get into the MSI run-up, and then we'll start to see some international competition, which will be really exciting. Looking forward to it.
Definitely, and that is it's less than a month away. MSI 2022 starts May 10th. So, nice. So before too long, we'll have a lot to go through for that, so looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, big time. Now, can I talk your ear off about some Magic here? I just have some quick notes here.
Take it over, my friend. I want to hear about it.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, so last week we were talking about big old Dino Boy, the story behind the Dino Boy, what happened. And so this week we were able to test out a bunch of those changes and really see it in action. We got 3 games on Monday with the Commander 9 gang, and boy... was it exciting. So a couple of the main points. So we went 1-2. We got a game. We got a W, which was fun. No shenanigans, no misplays, no wrong calls, no nothing. Just good old-fashioned winning. And I have to say, I had to fight for it. Ian made me use a bunch of interaction. Brett and Jason made me use a bunch of interaction. So it was really a battle. So I was happy to get that W. So yeah, 1 and 2. I just want to say I really enjoyed I got to play with a bunch of the changes that I made. One of the big key differences was seeing a critical mass of a bunch of the card draw spells that I had put in. I wasn't ever really without a way to refill my hand, and that felt really good because I think that was just one of the bigger problems with the deck before. It had bombs in it, and it had really powerful cards, but no way to churn through the deck and draw a bunch. So that was good to see.
Well, I was gonna say, so obviously playing it 2 weeks in a row with these changes and all, you see the difference in the overall deck performance. But did you have any cards that you pulled and played that you were like, man, if I use the old card and because I know that you have talked about there are cards that have a interaction, and then a lot of times there's cards that, whether it's due to the mana cost, due to the deck, due to whatever else, the types of mana, there have been times where you're like, oh, this card does the same thing but better. Mm-hmm. Did you have any moments going through the deck where you're like, oh, this would have let me scry 3 cards, but the old one it was like scry 3, but you have to pay 2 mana? Or like, did you see any like individual changes and the difference, or was it just the way the deck played as a whole having those additional like did you have any cards that you're like, oh, I'm swapping this one out for one that's the same but just better? Did you see some of that, or was it mostly like how it played out with like the
No,
additional card draw and all?
that's actually a really good question. So one of the cards that ended up being like very powerful and I was happy to have in the deck was a card called Vexing Shusher. So you can pay 2 mana for a card for a creature that is uncounterable, and then it also has an activated ability on it where you can pay a red or green mana and say this spell can't be, or target spell can't be countered. So what that allows you to do, if you can resolve the Vexing Shusher, you can protect any amount of spells where you don't just need, like, previously that was a green like interrupt that said if one of your spells is countered, or if one of your creature spells is countered, you can dig into your deck and put a creature onto the battlefield. Like, that's cool and flavorful.
Well, it like helps out if you're like, if you get hit and you're like, ah, well, at least I can like pull another card.
But a Vexing Shusher is 4 less mana, it stays on the board, and it doesn't just like the previous thing like still made my thing get countered, and I would just go get like a Llanowar elf or whatever is 7 down.
Just try and make up for it. Yeah.
Right. So it's much better to just have that piece on board that says, no, you can't really counter any of my stuff. So that's Vexing Shusher
is that
was one that was.
Is that instant speed too? So like if someone so someone like tries to throw a spell at you, you can just be like, ah, I've got a free mana.
Exactly.
Vexing Shusher. Nope, can't do that. That's beautiful. That's an awesome card.
It is. It's freaking amazing. And the interaction actually came up where because I had so much mana available, I would have been able to put a bunch of Vexing Shusher activations to where one counterspell for me and just had to fizzle because it was like, oh, he just couldn't, like he didn't have that many spells. So it ended up being just an actual house. I saw one of the newer card draw spells that I put in, which is Guardian Project. Pretty much every time a creature enters the battlefield, you draw a card. I was able to gain insane value from that. So just seeing a lot of the pieces really hum. Was just really fun. We got the W, and notably the other games, like I was very close to winning the game too. Like it wasn't just like, it didn't just have one standout game. Like it is performing so much better and like way more threatening. One of the fun things in game 3, so it was a comma cost 9 mana. I had him out on turn 5, which was insanely fast, and we were just pressuring life totals like very quickly. So yeah, overall, just really happy with the space that deck is in, and just excited to get to the kind of next commander project because I think he is like toned and done.
That's awesome because I was gonna ask about the other games, so I'm glad you hit that right off because I was like, okay, like I definitely get where sometimes just the card draw you end up with a great hand and everyone else just doesn't, and you like can run through it, but like to see it perform consistently well and be very competitive, that's so validating, I'm sure, for you to be like, oh yeah, like these were the right moves, like I moved this deck like way in the right direction by making those changes.
And then also, because I know we've talked where if I take a card out, I want to have a home for it. I was able to pivot all those cards that used to be in the Dino Tribal deck, quote unquote. I put them all in their own deck. They have their own commander that there wants to be a lot of dinos, and they'll get value for being dinos. So I came out of it just all for the better, and it's fun knowing that like the system of like tinkering and play in like a more focused manner is really working. I think giving me valuable information on the decks that I built.
Oh yeah, you get great like feedback, not from like the other player. Well, I mean, you might from the other players, but like just feedback
Sort of.
from like playing and seeing the results and all, which is cool. So
Yeah,
I'm
big time.
glad that you were able to get 3 more games with the upgraded deck, because that's like a cool thing to see in back to back weeks, to be able to like test those differences and all.
Yeah, big time. It was a lot of fun. Looking forward to some more games coming up next week. Before we get into the flavor of the week, I just want to give it a shout out to our listener, Tyler. He made the single word comment for shadowing. I just want to say it's funny avoiding spoilers for like a story that's been around literally forever. The books were written 1,000 years ago. The movies have been out forever. But here I am avoiding spoilers because that's how much we love our listeners. So I just wanted to say thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Colleen, for listening. No spoilers from me.
Yeah, we gotta avoid them. You never know. It doesn't matter. It could be 20 years old. You won't get spoilers here.
Snape killed Dumbledore. Shit.
Wait, what?
And moving on to the flavor of the week, Aaron, take us away.
So for my food for the flavor of the week, Colleen and I have had a fun like little tradition a bit with her brother and sister-in-law who live nearby in Philly. So every month and a half or so, Sunday night, we get together. We order Indian food from a restaurant close by that's always really solid, and play some Mario Party or Monopoly or whatever, and just kind of hang. So my Indian food this past week, I had some shrimp vindaloo. It was very good with some garlic naan. I enjoy my Indian food. It had a nice spicy kick to it. So that was my flavor of the week for the food. For my music, and I know that you shit on TikTok, and this is not a TikTok song, but it's a cool thing that I've started to have pop up on my TikTok page, is people who look at samples from different like rap songs and all, and like what the original sample was. And I came across one that was the sample for one of Pop Smoke, R.I.P., one of his songs, Dior. The sample, it was this orchestral like song that he like, or his mixer or producer or whatever, they like threw it in reverse with all these violins, chopped it up, like put a couple parts on repeat and everything, and mixed it in. And so there's this like cool reverse violin like piece that's mixed into his, as like one of the samples for one of his songs. And I've really like, it's been interesting seeing those different things. I find that so intriguing, like in I think it's in The Life of Pablo by Kanye. They the one song, it's got a like sample from a Christmas song from like 1907 or something ridiculous like
Kids
that.
See Ghosts.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Yes. I knew it was Kanye. I couldn't quite place where it was, but like finding people who can, or seeing videos or hearing things where people find where the actual sample came from, and having that pop up and getting to check it out is really cool to me, because it kind of blows my mind a little bit how these artists or producers or whoever can hear something and be like, oh, yeah, that random bit of violin from this orchestra piece, let me throw that in reverse. Oh, I like the sound of that. Okay, let me chop that here. And like finding ways to do that. It's so cool. And like the thought of them finding these samples, different artists potentially using the same sample or samples from the same song in completely unique and interesting ways. I just really enjoy that. So the sample is from a orchestral piece by Peter Gundry. It's called The Coven, and Pop Smoke used that in Dior. So I would recommend checking those both out. It was pretty cool. So that is my music flavor of the week. And for my show, I'm bringing it back around Kuroko's basketball, the basketball anime that I have been watching. I watched the finale and finished up the series just the other day. Left me with a nice warm fuzzy feeling at the end of the day. No spoilers. Everything turns out good. And so so I really enjoyed watching through that. It was different from a lot of the different animes that I've watched, but it still like had me hooked kind of throughout. So I enjoyed it a lot. Definitely worth checking out if you enjoy basketball and just anime in general. So Kuroko's basketball, and that is my flavor of the week.
Very cool. I'm glad you were able to finish that series. That sounds very interesting. So I'm glad you were able to finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was unique, but I enjoyed it a lot. So,
Nice.
But let me hear it. What do you got for me?
I'll start where you finish off. So my visual medium this week, as you know, we're watching the Infinity Saga. We completed Iron Man 3.
Nice.
And I have to say, way better on the rewatch than previously. Like, there were some moments that stood out, but I totally discounted the whole like Mandarin thing because it was just like he was like an actor and whatever. But I forgot that it was all set up by the original guy, the original Killian. Like,
Yeah.
he was the guy behind the scenes. So overall,
two's the worst one, right?
I don't even think 2 is that bad.
I don't think it's bad. I just think it's the worst one of the 3 Iron Man movies.
Sure.
Okay.
And it is. Yeah, you get like the dancing drunk Iron Man and all that, so that's like kind of lame. But yeah, most of it's pretty good. Iron Man 3 was kind of cool, but you get the kid and I guess you would say Tony Stark and the kid interactions are just so fucking funny. I love every minute of it when he tells him that his dad, must have left years ago for the lottery. Tony Stark pauses and he's like, well, you don't got to be a pussy about it. Like, there is just so much gold in those interactions. So Iron Man 3 is really fun. That's my flavor of the week.
Well,
go ahead.
Before, do you think, and this is like, obviously you'll get to this later. I want you to keep in mind how Tony Stark's attitude around younger people changes, and how you see it come in with like Spider-Man. I think you'll see some similarities. I think that's like a Tony Stark, Iron Man's like character arc is a pretty like good one overall, and like a fun one to watch. So I think that that's something I will just recommend you keep an eye out for as you continue on through the series.
That's a good point, because now that I'm thinking of it, there may be more interactions with younger people.
I don't know if there's a ton more, but I think that like in my mind, that kind of interaction in Iron Man 3, I think benefits him as a person later down the road with his future interactions and all. So
sure, no, that's a really good point. But yeah, Iron Man 3, really fun. My food for the week, Sarah makes a homemade guacamole that is amazing, and she can just like whip that up in no time, so we can just eat that with tortilla chips, and it is so tasty. And then my music for the week, I had it on shuffle. I was doing some of my stretches and some of my exercises, and I think it's a much older song. It's called "Doing It" by Charlie XCX featuring Rita Ora. It's just like a party anthem about like enjoying being together.
Oh
But
no! Wait, Charlie. Wait, is that how you say that?
that's how I've always said it, Charlie XCX.
Oh,
How would you say that?
I always no. I guess it would be XCX. I just always assumed it was a Roman numeral and never figured out the like. Because like there's like Quinn, like people are like, oh, Quinn XCII, and it's Quinn 92, and like
Right.
I think whenever I see that, I always think of it as like a Roman numeral, but I just never figured out the number. But
It
now
easily
looking
could
at
be.
it, I don't know what it is. So either way,
Yeah, so I just
continue.
say it like that.
So Charlie XCX, what was the song?
It's called "Doing It" featuring Rita Ora. I think it's just like about enjoying being together and hanging out and having fun. But it's just a lighthearted tune, and I really can't help but like dance like a goof when I hear those songs. And it's just so much fun, and it's a good little lighthearted party tune. So it's
Nice.
less about that song specifically and more about just like I enjoy that kind of stuff every now and again.
Is that do you think that the weather has to play into that a little bit? Cuz like
Could be.
I'm a big like weather changing my
Oh,
like
we
mood
know.
for music and all. I know, but the good weather this week definitely had me playing some more like lighthearted boppy tunes than kind
Oh,
of
big
what I had
time.
been listening to throughout the winter. So
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I might say so.
yeah, because this weather is just like it's the bee's
But
knees, my man.
it's phenomenal. I love it. But yeah, that's my flavor of the week. Just some quick stuff for you. Other than
Nice.
that, have any words for us here, Aaron?
Yeah, of course, as always, check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. And thank you, everyone, again for listening. We really appreciate you guys week after week listening to us jabber about all the fun stuff that we enjoy. So definitely join the conversation if you have some fun comments like Tyler, Colleen, Shane, as some frequent listeners. I know that you guys have jumped in, so we appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I got.
New episodes every Thursday. This one was a bit late, obviously, but new episodes every Thursday. YouTube, Google, Spotify. Check us out. Check us out on Twitter. Peace out, everyone. Thank you very much for listening.
Later.